necessarily agree with the argument that South Africa has amazing policy. I think we need to be more critical of policy we develop and how it's being developed.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love your. Any other? Before we move on to the next speaker, we'll hand over to Prof. We have any?
Maybe I can provide, and I really thank everybody for the inputs. I think you brought so many different points, you know, it provided a very multi-layered reflection on the topic, you know, from reflections on how we deal with AI on our daily lives and the pressures of work to the issues of verification and compliance and capabilities. And, you know, there was a lot there. And I was, you know, something that made me wonder, coming back to your initial point on, you know, and you also alluded to that, on how do we see, what are the opportunities in the African context to learn from this, but also to Africanize the process of policy development in the context of AI. It doesn't mean that good practices or best practices are sitting elsewhere, and that we must, you know, we didn't follow those good practices, therefore we are in this situation, right? It's more about, you know, making us reflect about what are the models, as you're saying, that can help us extract lessons, but also contextualize and domesticate this whole new space that we have to deal with of AI. How do we regulate and govern it? And you know, innovation in the policy space is what comes to mind when you bring in these issues, which is, you know, we have different modalities and we can be more experimental about how we do this. How do we do this in more informed, bottom-up ways that sort of keep checks and balances through all the stages of the production of policy and the design of policy and implementation. You know, we have different modalities, you know, regulatory sandboxes and, you know, ways in which we can be more experimental. You know, we work in the space of transformative innovation policy, and learning from those more experimental approaches and modalities to deal with this kind of unknown and very rapidly changing dynamic space of AI and the governance of it. I think it's maybe something to reflect on. So it's not a question, it's just a thought that came as I was listening to everybody's very, very good input.
Yeah, really very good inputs. Yeah, thank you. Sometimes because as I said, at OLAM we are concerned with governance. No questions we need to ask as Africans. What does governance mean in the African context? Because all the time we are always running with Eurocentric models. And that's why you see where we are with migration, with what, because we're trying to be things in the neighborhood, which is not about, because we are in a global world, you can learn from your neighbor, but you still need to be distinct in the way you do your things. So thank you so much for the input, but in the interest of time, because we now have 50 minutes and we still have 2 sessions to go. So I'll give Prof. You have your session from 50 minutes, 25 minutes. Okay, 30. Let's put it 30. So you give her maybe perhaps 20 minutes and then 10 minutes of.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
Thanks a lot, Margaret. Good morning, colleagues. I hope you're well. I'm moving on to the next session, which is on evidence, trust, and information integrity. And to kickstart us, we have Dr. Malisa-van der Walt. I think she's online. Oh, I thought you were. Sorry.
Because we try to introduce yourself as my friend.
Yes.
All right, so my name is Maya Mari. I'm the head of Department for Communication and Media at the University of Johannesburg. So over to you, Joyce. Sorry, I'm sure you're online. So we have a few minutes to just give us your interesting insights, and then we can open up the conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. All protocols observed. I come from a royal family where you have to observe everyone from aunt to uncle and everything. But anyway, all protocols observed. I wish to thank the organizers for affording me this opportunity to share my insights on this important contemporary AI topic in our nation. I'll say the withdrawal of the National AI Policy Draft is an embarrassment. I do agree. However, on the other hand, I see it as an opportunity for South Africa to emerge strong and be an example to other African states that are battling with the same challenge. We have a history of being highly capable of self-correction as a nation. A good example is the peaceful transition from apartheid regime to a democratically elected government. What we are facing here is not an individual problem, but a systemic issue. That is a system that is not well prepared to produce the quality of work or product expected. I'll borrow the philosophy of Edwin Deming, the quality movement professor of quality, who demonstrated through the red bead experiment that changing personnel does not guarantee improvement in quality of the outcome, like what we've done. So throughout this discussion, my focus will be on the system and not an individual. I don't know how much time I have, but Profi should just stop me. I prepare quite a bit of a document. But anyway, I'll start off by saying credibility of an AI policy. Before I get to specific, I want to flag the lens through which I'm discussing this topic. AI policy credibility today isn't just about how well a document is drafted. It's about who actually controls the infrastructure sitting underneath that policy. We've just watched this play out in time in Europe. I'll be referring to Europe now and again because they have already a comprehensive AI law, and I've been following them throughout their developments. In April this year, France announced it was moving 2.5 million government desktops of Microsoft onto Linux. That decision traces back to a French Senate hearing where Microsoft's own legal director admitted under oath that the company couldn't guarantee French citizens' data would be protected from US authorities, even when it was physically stored in Europe. One admission in a hearing room reshaped an entire government's technology strategy within a year. That's the test I would hold every point of discussion today. Not whether the policy reads well or they didn't use ChatGPT, but whether it survives that same question asked under oath. We go on to evidence verification and standards. AI policy drafting evidence verification and standards need to be very high, maybe at the same level of even higher than defense, medicine, and finance, and any other very sensitive sectors. Evidence needs a tiered hierarchy, primary legal and regulatory text at the top, then peer-reviewed or institutional data from bodies like OECD or World Bank, then industry reporting clearly caveated, and AI-generated synthesis at the bottom, treated as non-authoritative until it's validated by a human. But I want to add something the European experience is made unavoidable. For example, when a vendor claims to be sovereign or compliant, that claim in itself needs verifying against actual jurisdictional exposure. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all market sovereign cloud products. And yet, under oath, Microsoft's own French legal director said they couldn't guarantee protection from US authorities. So a verification standard that takes a vendor sovereignty claim at face value isn't rigorous. No matter how credentialed the source looks at on paper, traceability, reproducibility, and time-stamping still matter. This is a fast-moving technology, so sovereignty should be the center of scrutiny. Why am I talking about these cloud providers? That's where our data is. And we are saying we are sovereign cloud providers, we are safe, our data is safe. Our data is not safe. We don't have our data. We don't know where it is. They'll tell you it's in the server, but we don't know. And you find that all this discussion is actually centered on sovereignty, which should center the scrutiny of whatever we are doing when we are drafting our policies. So there are three layers in AI policy, sovereignty layers in AI policy. The first, legal sovereignty. Do we have laws, contracts, and enforcement powers to control how public sector data is used? The second layer is infrastructural sovereignty. Do we have access to cloud, compute, data centers, cybersecurity, capacity, and local technical expertise? And the third layer is epistemic sovereignty. Are these AI systems trained, evaluated, governed in ways that understand our languages, legal systems, social realities, constitutional values, and development priorities? We can use them, but are they trained to save us or to save somebody else? I'll also go on to say AI sovereignty is achieved through effective governance. And there are three pillars. in AI that should be governed. That's data, algorithms, and compute. I'll start off with data governance. What is it? It is the framework of rules, responsibilities, and processes that ensures data is accurate, secure, accessible, compliant, and used responsibly to support informed decision-making and organizational objectives. Without proper governance, organizations and governments face risks such as poor decision-making due to inaccurate or incomplete data, privacy breaches, and unauthorized access. Also, issues around regulatory non-compliance, cybersecurity incidences, biases in AI systems caused by poor quality or unrepresentative data, and loss of public trust may arise. To ensure adequate data governance, nations are seeking cloud sovereignty as the first step. The global sovereign cloud spending is forecast to hit $80 billion this year, and the European Commission itself estimates it needs around 120 billion euros in investment by 2035, just to have its own sovereign cloud and AI capacity competitively. That's the price of reclaiming infrastructure sovereignty after the fact, which is exactly why I argue policy needs to build infrastructure thinking in from day one and not retrofit it. So cloud dependence itself erodes trust in data protection and privacy. France is the sharpest example available. A G7 economy with decades of Microsoft integration still concluded that partial fixes weren't enough to move to migrate entirely. I will go back to the French experience. When a vendor claims to be sovereign or compliant, that claim itself needs verifying against actual jurisdictional exposure. Microsoft, Amazon, and Google all market sovereign clouds, but yet under oath, Microsoft's own French legal director said they couldn't guarantee protection from US authorities. So a verification standard that takes vendor sovereignty's claim at face value isn't rigorous, no matter how credentialed the source looks on paper. I'll move on to algorithmic governance. You might think about where we are as Africa, think about where we are as South Africa. Algorithmic governance, which is the problem that we are facing in this room today, is that algorithm governance is the framework of policy standards and institutional oversight that ensures algorithms are designed, deployed, and monitored in ways that are transparent, fair, accountable, secure, and aligned with legal and ethical principles. It provides the mechanisms through which automated decision-making can be trusted, challenged, and governed throughout its life cycle. The greatest danger of weak algorithmic governance is not that algorithms occasionally make mistakes like what they did. That's not the biggest one, but it is that they make decisions at scale without transparency, accountability, or meaningful human oversight. When that happens, information integrity is compromised. Evidence becomes less reliable, public trust erodes, and democratic institutions become more vulnerable. Algorithmic governance is therefore not simply about regulating technology. It is about safeguarding constitutional values, protecting the integrity of public decision-making, and ensuring that AI saves society rather than undermining it. Then I'll go on to the third pillar, which is compute governance. The framework of which is the framework of policies, rules, institutions, and oversight mechanisms that govern how computational resources, including high-performance computing, graphics processing units, cloud infrastructure, and data centers are developed, allocated, assessed, secured, and used to ensure AI is advanced in a manner that is secure, equitable, sustainable, and aligned with national strategic objectives. For the past few years, we have seen how compute is reconfiguring the geopolitical landscape. We will see that there is risk now, especially from where we are, if we have inadequate compute governance. And the risks that are included, I'll just point a number of them here, which is the first one, the loss of digital sovereignty. Without domestic compute infrastructure, African countries become dependent on foreign cloud providers and AI platforms. We are talking limiting their control over critical digital infrastructure and strategic decision-making. The other risk is reduced AI innovation and competitiveness. Limited access to affordable GPUs, high-performance computing, and cloud resources prevents African universities, researchers, and startups from developing and scaling indigenous AI solutions. Threats to information integrity, which is what I work on every day. Without sufficient compute capacity, governments and researchers cannot independently audit AI models. We can talk about it. It hallucinated. Why did it hallucinate? Can we actually examine it? Can we call Facebook or Sam Altman to come and tell us what's wrong with this ChatGPT? We cannot detect deepfakes. We cannot tell. We cannot verify AI-generated content or respond effectively to misinformation and disinformation campaigns. We cannot do that. We are busy working on that at my institution, but we've got limitations. Also, economic dependence and value extraction. Africa data may be used to train AI systems abroad, while the economic value, intellectual property, and technological benefits are captured outside the continent, reinforcing digital dependence. So we can't build our own Facebook platforms, our own TikTok platforms, but we still have now to use them and somebody else is benefiting. National security and critical infrastructure risk. Reliance on external AI infrastructure can expose governments and critical sectors to service disruptions, cyber threats, and reduce resilience during geopolitical and technological crises. Overall, AI governance is often discussed at high level, but it rests on three complementary foundations. That's data governance, compute governance, and algorithmic governance. Data governance ensures AI learns from trustworthy data. Compute governance ensures strategic control over the infrastructure that powers AI. And algorithmic governance ensures AI systems make decisions that are transparent, fair, accountable, and subject to meaningful human oversight. An effective South African AI policy should address all these three. If it is to move from regulating AI applications, we are regulating something that is being built somewhere. We are just regulating applications, and we want to move to governing the entire AI ecosystem. I'll continue if you give me the time.
1 minute.
Okay, and the last time, which is so important, Prof, I think you allow me to just quickly go through this one. I want to talk about generative AI, which is the reason why we are here, and that's the elephant in the room. So that elephant, it has 6 dimensions. I'll quickly go through them. This is very important because it will inform us also other processes that we are skipping in our policy drafting. So the first dimension is the data. Data is the raw material. A generative AI learns statistical patterns from enormous amounts of data, such as books, academic papers, website images, and videos. The quality of the AI depends heavily on the quality of its training data. Poor data leads to bias, hallucinations like it did, inaccurate outputs, and poor generalization. For these reasons, we see nations like China employ their own homegrown developed search engines like Baidu. On June 4, 2026, the European Parliament officially replaced Google as their main search engine, and they adopted the Quant, which is a homegrown French search engine, as the default engine. The move is a major step in the EU's push to digital sovereignty and stricter privacy protections. The integrity of AI outputs depends fundamentally on the integrity of the data on which they are trained and the information they process. Poor quality, biased, or manipulated data increases the risk of information disorder, although disorder can also arise from algorithmic amplification and malicious human use. For this reason, the EU led the data governance by drafting the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, in 2016, which was fully adopted in 2018. They have the European Data Protection Supervisor, who is very, very, very strict, which is the EDPS, and data protection officers in organizations monitoring the enforcement of the GDPR. Then when we look at the Chinese, for the Chinese, this is a chronological development of their Data Protection Act. First, they had the Cybersecurity Law of 2017, then they had the Data Security Law of 2021, and the Personal Information Protection Law, which is revered, and people, they say it's almost as strong as the GDPR in 2021. The Personal Information Protection Law is China's comprehensive privacy and data protection law that regulates how personal information is collected, processed, stored, transferred, shared, and protected by organizations and individuals. It established individuals' rights over their personal information while supporting China's broader objectives of cybersecurity, national security, and digital governance. Now I come at where I'm very curious about South Africa, our POPIA. Our POPIA, the Protection of Personal Information Act, which was assented by the president and enacted into law by 2013. And then 2020, most of substantive provisions came into force. And in 2021, the one-year grace period ended, making compliance mandatory. That's why POPIA became law in 2013. It has been fully enforced in 2021. Anyway, why POPIA provides a strong foundation for privacy? It was drafted in 2013, long before the rapid emergence of generative AI and large-scale cloud computing, leaving several regulatory gaps in today's AI ecosystem. For example, it does not comprehensively address the following. I am a technical person. I borrow legal and policy understanding, but I'm a technical person. That's why I'm hitting so much on the infrastructure and things like cloud. But the POPIA, it doesn't comprehensively address the following: cloud sovereignty, dependence on foreign hyperscale cloud providers, nothing. Cloud resilience, nothing. Cloud interoperability, nothing. Strategic cloud procurement, nothing. Governance of AI cloud platforms, we don't have. So as a result, POPIA protects the data, but says relatively little about the infrastructure on which the data resides. So it is governing something that it doesn't have. No governance of GPUs, HPC data centers, or AI compute infrastructure, no provisions on generative AI, foundation models or algorithmic accountability. So POPIA gives South Africa a strong foundation, yes, for protecting personal information, but it is not an AI governance framework. It governs privacy, not the full AI ecosystem. As AI increasingly depends on large-scale data, cloud infrastructure, and advanced compute, South Africa will need complementary policies that addresses data governance, algorithmic governance, compute governance, and digital infrastructure if it is to build a trustworthy and sovereign AI capabilities. I'll stop here for now. When you give me other time, I can continue.
All right.
Thank you.
That was very interesting, very, very interesting. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if there are any immediate reactions within the room or online so that we can stay within our allocated time. Any reactions or additions?
There was a lot of agreement coming from the online.
Have anything in the chat? Let's okay, just got feedback.
Or is just feedback? Okay. Any immediate reactions?
Sorry, I feel like I might be talking too much. Just the general thought, I absolutely agree with those points you made around from a governance perspective, and those focus areas are, and I'm not sure if I missed it, but I was interested in your thoughts around the role of the governance of talent being one of usually amongst the 3 or 4 big issues that are being addressed from an AI governance perspective. So, and that includes everything from like research and mobility to AI literacy, etc. So just wondering
absolutely.
So that's being positioned.
Yeah, I'm going to address it actually if I was given more time. I was going to
Let's
see if I can.
10 minutes so she can get 5.
Okay, fine.
Okay, because I still had the dimension of algorithms, and your question comes under human expertise. So I'll jump onto, but I think I want to this to the algorithms, because the issue we are having today is around the governance of algorithms, which we cannot, it's out of our control, but they are here and messing us around. Okay, can I quickly go through? I'm wasting my time. Algorithms are I'm just looking at the dimension of the generative AI, which is the algorithms now. The algorithms are the mathematical procedures that enable AI to identify patterns and make predictions. For large language models, algorithms include the neural networks. I'm not going to go deeper into technical transformers, architectures, and so forth. The algorithm determines how the AI process information and generates outputs. For us to reap the benefits, they should be governed effectively to ensure that automated decision-making systems serve the public interest and respect human rights. So South Africa has built an important foundation through POPIA and constitutional protections, but our governance architecture remains weighted towards protecting data rather than governing algorithms. And even that data, we don't have it. As AI becomes embedded in public service and the economy, we need algorithmic governance that ensures transparency, accountability, explainability, independent auditing, and meaningful human oversight. At the same time, algorithm governance should not be viewed in isolation. It must be integrated with data governance, compute governance, and digital infrastructure strategy if we are to build trustworthy and sovereign AI systems. I'll look also at the compute, which I've already mentioned, but for many years, AI governance focused primarily on data and algorithms. However, the emergence of frontier AI has made compute a strategic resource in its own right. Countries that lack access to advanced compute infrastructure will increasingly struggle to train, deploy, and govern AI independently. Because now they are putting so many restrictions on, if you look at the policies of the executive orders and even this action plan of the US, how they are governing compute, how they are, let's say, is it fighting or whatever they are doing in China, it's all around how much you can buy, which chip can you get, etc. And here we are, we have nothing. We are waiting for them to detect to us which ones can we buy and how much GPUs can we have. And also they're able, why we always say in our governance that compute governance is quite promising amongst the three pillars. The reason being that compute, we can trace it, we can quantify it. It's excludable, it's traceable, and it's quantifiable. So by saying that, it means when you have the compute that you purchased from America or China, they will know where it is, they'll know what you are doing with it, and they'll even detect to you how much you must buy. That's how the risk is so high. So the absence of compute governance weakens information integrity by concentrating control over AI infrastructure in the hands of a few actors, reducing transparency and accountability, limiting independent verification, increasing dependence on foreign platforms, and enabling the rapid generation and amplification of misinformation without adequate oversight. I'll quickly move on to, okay, let me just finish this part whereby I'm talking about this impact on information integrity now, because that's my area, that's my food every day. And information integrity is not determined solely by the quality of data or transparency of algorithms. It also depends on who controls the computational infrastructure that creates it. And also, how do you evaluate it and distribute AI-generated information? Without compute governance, independent verification becomes more difficult. Public interest research is constrained, and countries become increasingly dependent on external AI infrastructure. In this sense, compute governance is not only an infrastructure issue, it is an information integrity issue. I'll now move on to human expertise. So you find that the other dimension of generative AI is human expertise. So what expertise are we looking at? That's technical, legal, and institutional capacity, the usual three. But there is the AI literacy and audit capabilities in public sector. Legal experts who are AI risk and data protection literate, and institutional mechanisms that like cross-departmental coordination and regulatory sandboxes. But if I had this to name them one capacity at this stage that we need, because of where we are in our AI developmental stage, we need AI procurement literacy.
Sure.
The ability to actually see through the sovereignty claim rather than accept it at face value. We are purchasing these AI systems, but we understand them. Even those people who are responsible for purchasing them, do they know the risk they carry, the vulnerabilities? So these experts, besides the other technical and legal, et cetera, but we really need the AI literacy procurement. Yesterday, if not years ago. Even the European Commission got this wrong. It's very, very difficult. Their first sovereignty scored cloud tender this year awarded a contract to a consortium that turned out to be running on Google Cloud's underlying infrastructure through a governance wrapper. Critics called it sovereignty washing because they're very, very critical about their sovereignty. So if a well-resourced regulator can miss that, it tells you procurement capacity is the gap in Africa and in South Africa, that we need to address it as yesterday and close it before committing to major AI infrastructure partnerships, not after. Can I continue? Yeah, I just have the governance left. That's the last thing. And then we can talk about recommendations later. Can I, just 2 minutes? Yes, the final dimension of generative AI, which is the governance, which is very, very important. So you find that South Africa should resist the temptation to begin with comprehensive AI regulation. And even this, for me, I'm not looking down upon our processes. I respect our government. I respect what they are doing. But for me, this policy draft is a nice to have. I don't see the substance of it. But anyway, we want to say AI governance, we should resist from diving deeper into trying to show that we can also regulate it. And these are our regulations. But AI governance is a maturity journey. We should first strengthen data governance, then establish information integrity and evidence governance, followed by algorithmic governance and compute governance. Only then can we build an integrated AI governance framework that is both practical and sustainable. In our context, trust is built not by regulating alone, but by strengthening the capabilities that produce trust with data, trust with evidence, trust with algorithms, trust with infrastructure. That I can walk into if we have a DP of the data protection officer and say, where is my data? Can you tell me where my data is? I don't want you to tell me, but it's in the AWS and AWS and Microsoft and then the cloud. No, you must tell me where it is, where I'll be confident that my data is safe. And that's what I'll end my recommendations. Maybe I can share the recommendations. I won't go into the details, and maybe I can go to the few details that I have. First, I would say strengthen data governance by improving data quality, stewardship, interoperability, provenance, and secure data sharing across government and the private sector. Establish an information integrity framework that sets national standards for evidence verification, AI-generated content disclosure, digital provenance, and independent fact verification. This framework should protect the integrity of information used in policymaking, public communications, elections, and research. This is what we are doing at our center. We are trying, but we have lots of limitations from what I've just discussed now. And also develop an algorithmic governance framework that requires transparent explainability, independent audits, impact assessment, and meaningful human oversight. You know, I studied AI management overseas. So when I came back, I was shocked that people can just use these AI systems without any auditing, without even going through a system of verification that they are safe for the public. In other countries, you can't do that. China, you cannot. You have to register. They have to examine that. You have to explain to a panel, and they will actually question you until they are satisfied. That's when it can be deployed and be used for the public. Also adopt a national compute governance strategy. This I've talked a lot about it, but there's one very important one, which I feel that I shouldn't leave it out. This is the build institutional capacity, but I want to say this one, I'm just emulating the European Union also because it is a similar setup to Africa. But I want to say that we should create a permanent, multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder AI governance mechanism similar to the EU AI Office. Why? This is a different technology. This is a different policy. We've been drafting policies throughout our lives in South Africa, all over. But this technology is complicated. You need a specific office that really focuses on this, which is a multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholders, and bringing together government, academia, industry, civil society, ethical experts. AI evolves rapidly and governance must evolve with it. Like in the EU AI office, there are people who are just sitting, watching what is happening on a daily basis. And there are people researching. I was looking at their code of practice, which they've come up with now to enforce the EU AI Act. 1,000 experts came together to put together that document, which means that we are dealing with a very complex animal or whatever technology, and we need the expertise of everybody to come together. And let's have this office. It cannot be sitting in one department, and we expect the minister and those few people to handle this problem. I don't think it will work. We need that kind of a similar setup.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your input. It was amazing, but because of time, unfortunately, I have to cut you short. But just to summarize what you're saying, I think we are governing what we don't know, and we are also governing it at the periphery instead of the core, which is also very problematic going forward. So I think going forward, I think the policy-making ecosystem must understand and appreciate that what we are dealing with is unprecedented technology. It's very transformative. It's always changing. And if we really need to make sure that we govern it well, we probably need to bring more people on the table, more than the 5 that we currently have, or maybe we need more than that, because it's multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and many other things that are important in order to move forward. So thank you so much for your input, and I hope everybody has really benefited from it. But because of time, we just have to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We are moving to the
last one.
the last part of the program. This was so rich, and so you covered so much, and you gave us a very good sense of the complexity, but also the direction that is needed. Because the complexity doesn't mean that there's no direction, right? And I think you made that point very clear. I think now we are sort of going to the last part of the dialogue that will talk about responsibility, review, and institutional safeguards. And we will open it up. I think we can also have space for people to raise issues that have been touched by other speakers. But the guiding question for this part of the dialogue is what review routines, accountability mechanisms, and public sector capabilities are needed when AI policy is produced through distributed processes and when AI tools may themselves enter policy work. So this part of the dialogue will focus on responsibility and capacity, who should verify evidence, how review procedures should be organized, what safeguards are needed for the use of AI tools in policy work, and what institutional arrangements could strengthen credible AI policy making in South Africa and beyond. You touched upon this need for multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary, agile mechanisms for institutional arrangements that allow us to deal with the rapidly changing environments. I think that gives us a sort of sense of the kind of institutional arrangements that you have recommended based on your presentation. But we can perhaps think about other configurations and institutional ways in which we can provide that necessary flexibility, agility, and response to the changes in this technology. So yes, I would like to open it up to those online. It would be great to hear from you as well. Those who have spoken may want to respond to some of the other presentations or what you've heard, but also it would be great to hear from those who haven't spoken as well, and some of you have been posting in the chat. So I don't know if Alex, you would like to, we'll see what is the appetite here in the room, but also online, and then we can also come back to some of the questions that are on the chat. William, I see that you're on. I see you're ready.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
It's maybe just a comment to not actually a helpful comment, but as somebody with sort of an ethics, governance, whatever background, deeply involved in AI stuff, conceptually, I find it very, very difficult to think of ways in which we can keep people accountable for their AI use, over and above having principles, guiding principles. But the moment it gets to enforcement, at this point, I struggle to see what I mean, yeah. So maybe just an honest reflection on how to deal with the responsible use of AI in certainly the policymaking things. I can't see a clear solution at this point. Sorry, and thank you.
Great. Anybody has some immediate reaction to that? We are all users, so we all have sort of anecdotal. Sorry? Oh, please, Malanga, please go ahead.
I wanted to pick up on what Willem said because in 2024, I wrote a piece on particularly deepfakes, so another form of generative AI, not this kind of text-based generative AI, but more concerning videos, images, voice cloning, and the like, because it raises a multifaceted public safety problem from epistemic integrity, information integrity across different sectors. And I think in this public policy type of sector or concern, one of the most common reactions is to want to say we should, regulate it afresh or come up with new laws to regulate this particular problem. But I think a lot of where the hallucination problem has already come up, like I said earlier, in the legal firms, in public organizations or departments, these already have regulated professional standards. I mean, the Public Service Act, for example, gives us the disciplinary and accountability machinery, which is why we saw all the suspensions happening in the Department of Home Affairs and the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies when this problem surfaced. In the legal space, we have the Legal Practice Council, which is why a number of attorneys have been referred for disciplinary at the Legal Practice Council for this. So enforcement sits in those kinds of mechanisms already, be it a body or a legislation that already governs how this kind of work should, be dealt with. I think maybe what is missing now is not law, it's the implementation phase. So that's why I was mentioning the issue on, a directive on disclosure, a certification requirement, and so forth. Because, even when you look at, technical standards for developing technology, we could even go as basic as outside the context of technology and think about technical standards for just making a simple car, for example. There has to be some technical approval of that. And what we're faced with now is, can we approve text instead of having text land on our table and we realize, oh, this has fake sources? So implementation is possible. I just think we really need to sit down and innovate more ways to make that enforcement alive, and pull on what we already have that exists that can do this. But I did want to mention earlier when Dr. van der Walt was speaking, is that the generative AI problem is also, largely a skills gap. Because I find, even in the context of university students, because I'm an academic at Wits University, I find that the more sophisticated the user, the more sophisticated the use of AI, which really means that one of the things that public offices should be investing in now is to develop the skills capacity of their own employees in how to use AI the right way. We should not ignore that. And this is the same reason why I do not bar my students from using AI, because the firms that most of them are going to be employed in already use AI. They have, AI developed for their own purposes already. So it seems to me that what Africa also needs to accept is that AI literacy is part of the skills package now. And to solve these kinds of issues, we have to equip people in that particular scope as well. We shouldn't ignore it. We shouldn't, label it as bad, but instead we should get more people to use AI so that they can be able to know how not to use it as well. Back in the days when computers were still new, we used to say the computer is only as clever as you are. And in this case, the AI problem is the same. If you don't know how to use AI properly and know the steps of verification properly, you're probably going to end up with a blunder. Yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Great, excellent. Do we have any responses? We have some reactions on the chat. I don't know if I wanted to give an opportunity to the people in the room to respond to something like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mashinini. I just wanted to add on to what she has just said, that I want to go back a little bit, that the problem that we are having, even with information integrity, is that we cannot control what is coming out. We have to go back to see which algorithms or which platforms are we accepting, be it in the educational sector, be it in health, be it in defense, because we cannot, it's free for all. For example, in China, you will not find any of these systems. They have developed and they continue to develop their own systems. The moment we continue using or depending on LLMs that are being produced somewhere else, these issues will never go away. But the solution is for us now to gear up and produce our own homegrown LLMs that understand our current realities, that is the clean data that we know they've trained on, and that will speak to us. And most of these issues, actually, not all, but some of them will go away.
Great, I think that's, yes, please go ahead.
It's me again. I can't resist because I think there's, we could talk here all day. I think when we get to the enforcement layer, actually just what Nomalanga's points, I think the enforcement layer is almost too late in this process. So I agree that literacy is an important input, but just from our own experience, finding that the real burden is the kind of administrative layer where like your PIs, your project managers, or your officials are trying to now deal with all of these. Like, for example, we have research teams, and you have researchers that are now using AI tools and then generating content, and now the PIs and project managers are having to now work through all of this and figure out what is authentic and what's not, because you don't want to refer everything to an enforcement level. You're not wanting to send everyone to disciplinary processes. So how do we? So there's a project management layer that I personally finding quite challenging, and I think and the way we're trying to start approaching those things is, of course, guidelines, etc., but also just have, like, at the start of a project, agreement on how AI is used in specific ways, or even writing a chapter together. These are the specific ways we agree to use it, and these are the tools we'll use. And so there's some boundaries defined from an administrative perspective, so that at least there's a little bit of kind of project management control or administrative control. And so I would be interested in what others maybe have been doing to try and administratively manage without, and then that potentially then links with enforcement layers and others. And literacy is kind of a foundational element.
Great. We have I'm mindful of time. We have about 5 minutes to the rest of the dialogue, and there are a couple of points that we may want to pick from the chat. Hopefully, that will give us 3 or so, 4 minutes, and then we'll hand over to Olga for the closing remarks.
All right. So Odilile says the point of AI procurement literacy is particularly important, especially in the public sector. But do you think that perhaps poor literacy is done on purpose in the face of embedded big tech, which is described broadly in South Africa's AI ecosystem?
Let's take another one. And then I saw that there were a number of them related to AI literacy, and there was a whole discussion that went on the chat, providing sources and so on different studies related to AI literacy. Yeah, I think maybe we want to...
Tesfaye is saying that I think we are using AI daily. I hope it is important if we discuss more on of it in academia. Dr. Mark said the more sophisticated the user, the more sophisticated the use. Really interesting, hard-hitting comment.
Usually talks about transparency and accountability.
Right. That's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I usually mentioned something on transparency and accountability. One can perhaps build mechanisms to regulate AI usage in different contexts. So it's alluding to the context specificity of accountability discussions, and providing different examples of countries that have managed to do that. I don't know if any of you would like to speak up on some of you feel strongly about some of these points. Ayushi, would you like to perhaps bring up your points in verbally if you're still on the call?
Oh, yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. So, yeah, what I was saying was during the discussion, I was thinking that we're talking about governance and, usage of a lot of these technologies like ChatGPT and how we we can't really govern technologies that are based in other countries. So I was thinking about how sovereign systems are being developed, like in India, there's LLMs being developed for bureaucratic efficiency, and the hardware and everything is also, the infrastructure is also built in the country, and it is being funded by the government. But that is, again, a solution that is going to be extremely expensive. So I was just thinking that in terms of when it comes to formulation of policies, which can effectively work as guidelines, and you can't take the government to court when you talk about policy and those guidelines, how can we effectively manage usage of technology like ChatGPT or other systems when it comes to the formulation of the text of these policies per se? Because a lot of different actors come into the formulation process, like a lot of think tanks, a lot of academics. So it was just a point I was thinking about, and I wrote in the chat.
Great, thank you, thanks, Ayushi. I don't know. I think we are now reaching the point where we have to close this part of the discussion. We've taken all of these points. I think a lot of it is opening issues that we need to think about. We obviously haven't found the solutions to all of this.
This discussion was very useful for me to. Sorry, and I was just saying that this is a very interesting discussion. It just led me to think of these things. I just wanted to write it. But yeah, the discussion has been great.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for contributing to it with your thoughts and experience. I will now hand over to Olga to help us wrap everything up and give us the coherence that we need to make sense of this very, very complex and topical phase.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Olga.
Thank you, Erica. So it was really interesting conversation that revealed a lot of layers and a lot of complications connected to AI. But one idea came up when I listened to different angles, how different experts and participants from different fields perceive AI. And it seemed that we have here a wall of paradox, because AI is no longer just a thing we regulate. It is actually the force that regulates us back. It sits like on both sides of the table. It's an object for the policy, but also it's the subject, it's agent that actively reshapes the policy in real time. So I think it's quite a rupture. And that's why we cannot think about AI policy and making AI policy as something usual, because it connects something that we already did in common AI policy process, but also it creates totally new environment where we have new agent. So how we can use this duality? Maybe to regulate as dialogue. Maybe through building some adaptive sandboxes where AI behavior tests the rules. So we need something small to be controlled, to understand how it works in specific environment. Then maybe since we can't fully see how it works inside AI. So, but we can manage its actions in context. So we should shift towards this area to regulate people, to regulate institutions, to create these rules, how to use this new agent, new tool. And also, I think we have no options but to share the steering wheel. Because after all, we cannot ignore and we cannot ban AI. So maybe we should think about treating AI as a junior partner, not a hammer, and let it reveal some blind spots and correct its trajectory together. So it's very difficult, very interesting process, and I'm happy that this event is going on. I think that the results will be very fruitful, and we plan to combine all the opinions and ideas and release the second version of discussion paper and invite everybody to comment and to be part of this very important process of establishing new field of regulation. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the speakers and to all the participants for the interaction. And Olga, would you tell us if there will be some, we will come up with something written, right, out of this, like a report? Yeah.
Yes, she has mentioned that there is a discussion paper which we have published. I think they shared the link. If you haven't gotten the link, we can email you. It's just based around this whole discussion. But after this, she might reach out individually to some of you as experts, just have brief interviews. Then in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we will then have a policy brief around it.
Excellent, excellent.
Have a for review, so you can participate. Still, you can reply the survey form. Thank you.
So everybody's got the link to the discussion document.
No, we can share.
Okay, we will.
Have it.
So it will be shared with all the participants in this meeting. Can they disseminate it themselves, or is it better to keep it contained to the participants in this meeting? How do you want to manage it?
Not really. We actually even put out publicly like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like restricted. But
so you would like as much input as possible.
As possible, but share with all of you.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Great. Thank you, everybody. There is, for those online, I'm sorry that you can't join us for coffee, but we will be having some snacks outside.
Yes, yes.
So we'll continue some of these discussions that have been open in person here. So, okay, see you next time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.